The forgotten history of prehistoric times, a mind-blowing secrets that archaeologists still cannot explain long before recorded history. Before the rise of kings and empires, there was another world, a forgotten age buried beneath layers of time. Fossils, carvings, and forbidden texts whisper of beings so vast, so powerful, that our ancestors worshipped them as gods. But who were they really? Were these giants merely myths born of imagination, or lost species erased from the pages of human memory? In the mountains of the Himalayas, in the sands of Egypt, and deep within ancient Vedic verses like the Abhinayara and the Vedas, there are fragments, clues, describing civilizations that walked the earth long before humans were supposed to exist. Some scientists call them coincidences, others call them impossible, but the evidence keeps surfacing. Tonight, we'll travel through forgotten time, from prehistoric fossils to mythic scrolls, to uncover the lost age of giants and gods. Stay with us, because what you're about to hear might change the way you see human history forever. Hey there, history explorer. What if I told you there was once a time when gods and giants really walked the earth, and science still can't explain it? From ancient Vedas to fossilized mysteries, we're diving deep into the world before history began. So, grab a drink, get cozy, and join me on this journey through time. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. You won't want to miss this one. The world before humans, fossils of forgotten beings. Long before our first ancestors shaped tools or painted caves, there existed a world unlike anything we can imagine today. The earth was young, wild, untamed, and roaring with life. Volcanoes breathed smoke into an alien sky, seas shimmered under a thicker atmosphere, and in those early ages, colossal beings roamed, creatures so vast they left footprints that seemed almost divine. But here's the mystery: what if some of those footprints weren't made by animals, but by something else? Scientists call it prehistory, a span of billions of years before written records. Yet ancient texts from across the world, from the Vedas of India to Sumerian tablets, describe events and beings that seem to belong to those very same forgotten ages. The question is, how could ancient humans have known about something that supposedly happened long before they existed? The earth before us. Imagine standing on earth by million years ago. There are no humans, no cities, not even trees as we know them. Yet the seas are alive, teeming with strange trilobites, ammonites, and sea scorpions longer than a man's arm. Life was still finding its shape. But something strange happens as we move forward in time. Fossils begin to appear that don't fit neatly into our evolutionary puzzle. Giant skeletons, mysterious bones, and massive imprints have been discovered, not just of dinosaurs, but of something eerily human-like, yet impossibly large. One of the most controversial examples comes from the 19th century, the discovery of enormous humanoid footprints in Nevada, measuring nearly 4 feet long. Skeptics dismiss them as erosion or coincidence, but others, including early geologists, admitted they couldn't explain how such detailed impressions, with toes and arches, could form naturally in solid rock. And that's just one example. Across the world, similar reports emerge, from South Africa's Bigfoot Rock to the limestone caves of Turkey. Each discovery whispers the same haunting question: were we really the first intelligent beings on Earth? The forgotten fossils. Now, let us talk fossils, our Earth's memory, written in stone. Every fossil tells a story of a creature's life, its death, and the moment it was buried and preserved. But some fossils tell stories that science still struggles to read. Take the Castelnau giant, discovered in France in 1890. Excavations revealed human bones, a femur, a tibia, and humerus that belonged to someone estimated to be over 10 feet tall. The discovery was so baffling that the French Academy of Sciences itself reviewed it. Their conclusion: human bones of abnormal size, beyond current anthropological explanation. Then there's the Loveland skull, found in Colorado, an oversized human-like cranium with a cranial capacity far beyond modern humans. Radiocarbon dating placed it in an impossible range, too old for Homo sapiens, too advanced for earlier hominids. Of course, mainstream science explains such cases as misidentifications, fossil compression, or simple exaggeration. But here's what's curious: ancient texts, from Genesis to Mahabharata, speak of a time when giants walked among men. How could cultures separated by oceans and millennia describe the same phenomenon? Coincidence? Or are we seeing fragments of truth scattered across myth, fossil, and memory, all pointing to the same lost epic? Myth meets stone in ancient Sanskrit. The word daitya refers to beings of enormous size and power, born from divine lineages, yet destined to fall. The Vedas describe them as ancient rulers who defied the gods and were cast down during a great celestial war. Now, at first glance, that sounds like pure mythology, but what if it has more than that? Let us connect a few dots. In almost every ancient civilization, Mesopotamia, Egypt, Greece, Mesoamerica, there are legends of a time when beings of great stature ruled the earth. The Greeks called them Titans, the Hebrews called them Nephilim, the Sumerians spoke of the Anunnaki, and in the Apanaira, an obscure text within early Vedic tradition, there are cryptic lines about those who measured mountains and drank the rivers dry. Who were these measurers of mountains? Poetic metaphor, or a distant echo of beings whose size and power once reshaped landscapes? Archaeologists often say myths exaggerate truth. But what if the myths are the truth, just told through the language of memory and fear? Unearthed shadows. Let us move from legend to laboratory. In 2012, a research team in Siberia uncovered what they called anomalous bones fossils with both humanoid and non-human features, buried deep within Pleistocene layers. The bones showed dense, reinforced structure, something beyond what a normal human skeleton could support. When they sent DNA samples for testing, results came back inconclusive. The mitochondrial DNA matched no known species, not Neanderthal, not Denisovan, not modern human. It was something else entirely. What's even stranger is that the site also contained engraved stones, symbols similar to early Vedic markings found thousands of miles away, to regions, to cultures, separated by continents, yet connected by the same symbols and myths. Coincidence again? Or memory surviving across migrations, whispers from a time before recorded history, when these giants might have truly existed? The geological puzzle now. Here's something fascinating. According to geology, the oldest known human fossils belonging to Homo habilis date back roughly 2.4 million years, but the rocks containing some giant imprints date to over 20 million years ago. How could that be? If the dating is accurate, and in many cases, multiple tests have confirmed the layers, that means someone or something with human-like features walked the earth millions of years before humans officially existed. Scientists often call this UPART, short for out-of-place artifact, but that term itself admits confusion. Because if something is out of place, it means we don't yet understand where it truly belongs. Maybe our timeline isn't wrong, maybe it's incomplete. Echoes beneath our feet. Picture this: you're standing in a desert somewhere in South America. The wind is hot and dry. Beneath your feet, a team of paleontologists brushes dust from a massive bone, not reptilian, not mammalian, but eerily humanoid. They exchange looks, silence, disbelief. That silence has echoed for centuries. Many early fossil finds were hidden, lost, or quietly reclassified, not out of conspiracy, but out of fear of ridicule. In the Yi-2000s, when science was solidifying its understanding of evolution, anything that didn't fit the official model was too disruptive. But over time, the pattern emerges across the globe. From Patagonia to Mongolia, fossil fragments of unknown beings continue to surface. Some scientists quietly admit that a few specimens defy classification. They simply vanish into private archives, labeled anomalous. And that brings us to a question humanity still struggles with. If we ever find undeniable proof of an intelligent species before humans, what would that mean for us? Would it rewrite religion, history, and science in one stroke? A world of giants. Let us take a step back, millions of years back, to the Miocene epoch. About 20 million years ago, the earth was warm, forests stretched across continents, and giant mammals like Parasauratherium, the largest land mammal ever known, roamed Asia. Now imagine something else walking among them, a bipedal figure, towering, observing. Is it impossible? Maybe. But remember, evolution is not a straight line. It's a web, full of dead ends, offshoots, and forgotten branches. Perhaps somewhere along that web, an intelligent species did arise, a massive, powerful, and short-lived, before nature erased its traces. If that is true, fossils would be rare. Erosion, tectonic shifts, and extinction would have buried every sign deep beneath layers of time, and yet, every myth, every ancient record, keeps pointing us back. From the giant kings of the Mahabharata to the titans buried beneath Mount Athries in Greece, the story repeats: a powerful race existed, they fell, and humanity rose from their ashes. The age of gods, ancient texts, and the secrets of the Vedas. When we think of history, we often imagine dusty scrolls, stone temples, or fading ruins. But some of the oldest documents in human memory were never carved in stone. They were sung, carried by sound, passed through breath, preserved not on paper but in vibration itself. These are the Vedas, the world's most ancient surviving texts. But within their verses lies something deeper than prayer or poetry. They speak of a time before humans, a time of Devas and Daityas, of vast cosmic battles and golden ages that predate known civilization. At first glance, it reads like myth, but when compared to global archaeological evidence, a sudden climate shifts, ancient cataclysms, lost technologies, a strange picture begins to emerge. Could these songs of the gods be distant memories of an advanced, prehistoric world, one that vanished before recorded time began? Whispers of a lost civilization. The Rig Veda, one of the earliest of the Vedas, speaks of an age when the earth was young, and the sky was near. What does that even mean, the sky was near? Some scholars interpret it as symbolic language for a different atmosphere, thicker, denser, perhaps during a prehistoric epoch when the Earth's conditions were unlike today. Others suggest it may refer to an age when celestial bodies, comets, asteroids, or even moons appeared much closer in our sky, creating phenomena that ancient observers recorded in mythic form. In other words, the Vedas may not be just mythology, they might be memories, ancient data encoded in verse. Now, imagine this: you sitting under a vast prehistoric sky, tens of thousands of years before the pyramids, before writing, before agriculture. You hear the rhythmic chanting of priests, oral historians describing the rise and fall of worlds. Could these chants be preserving fragments of real events, floods, volcanic winters, or cosmic impacts, retold as divine wars between gods and demons? The question isn't whether the gods were real, it's what those gods represented. Apanira, the Forgotten Chronicle. Among lesser-known Vedic references lies a nearly forgotten text, the Apanira, an archaic Sanskrit manuscript said to predate much of the later canon. Few copies exist, and most have been lost to time, but fragments survive, and they fascinating. The Apanira describes beings of the high light, who ruled before the sons of clay. It tells of a time when Earth's gravity was gentle, when mountains moved like living beasts, and when the rivers flowed upward in worship. At first, it sounds poetic, almost impossible, but if you interpret it through the lens of ancient cosmology, or even geology, you start to see something uncanny. Some scientists now suggest that during the late Pleistocene and earlier epochs, shifts in Earth's magnetic field and axial tilt created massive displacements of land and sea. To an ancient observer, continents rising and sinking would indeed look like mountains moving and rivers flowing backward. Could the Apanira be describing these cataclysmic transformations, the end of an age and the dawn of a new one? And if so, who were these beings of light ruling before us? The gods who fell to earth in Vedic cosmology, the gods or devas, are not merely divine figures, they are forces of nature, personified, but some verses blur the line between spiritual beings and physical entities. One passage in the Atharva Veda speaks of the sons of heaven who came down in vessels of fire. Sound familiar? It echoes global legends, from the flaming chariots of Ezekiel to the sky boats of Egypt and the flying discs of pre-Incan myths. Archaeologists and anthropologists often classify such parallels as coincidence, the universal tendency of human imagination. But what if ancient civilizations were documenting the same historical phenomena through different languages? Could vessels of fire be a memory of celestial events, meteor showers or impacts, mistaken as divine descent? Or could it be something more literal? An ancient contact not with extraterrestrial visitors, but with survivors of a prior, lost human civilization, a remnant of those giants and gods we met in Chapter Yi? The sound of the universe. One of the most fascinating aspects of the Vedas is their focus on sound. They say that the universe began not with light, but with vibration, the primordial ohm. Now, modern physics tells us something startlingly similar, that everything in the universe vibrates. From atoms to galaxies, existence itself is oscillation, waves in energy and time. Isn't that remarkable? An ancient idea, sung thousands of years ago, mirrors the findings of modern quantum theory. So what does that tell us about the civilization that produced these texts? They may not have had telescopes or particle accelerators, but they had something else: intuition refined over countless generations, oral knowledge passed through millennia, tracing back to an age where observation, memory, and myth blurred into one. The Vedas speak of cycles of creation and destruction, each spanning millions of years. Of the Yugas, the Satya Yuga, a golden age of purity; the Treta Yuga, an age of strength and conflict; the Dvapara Yuga, the age of fading truth; and finally, the Kali Yuga, the age of darkness. Our present time, to modern minds, it reads like allegory, but to the ancients, it was cosmological history, an accounting of time on a geological scale, hundreds of millions of years, written in verse. Echoes across the world here as what is truly strange. The Vedic timeline of cycles matches, almost eerily, other ancient traditions. The Mayan calendar, for example, also describes repeating suns of worlds created and destroyed in cosmic rhythm. The Egyptians spoke of the Zeb-Tepi, the first time, when gods ruled before humans. The Sumerians recorded reigns of kings that lasted tens of thousands of years before a great flood reset civilization. How could cultures, separated by oceans, all remember the same story, an ancient golden age destroyed by cataclysm? Maybe it's because it really happened, not as myth, but as distant human memory, or even genetic memory, passed down from those who survived an event so massive it reshaped civilization itself. The lost knowledge. The Vedas also describe technologies that seem far beyond their time: flying machines, Vimanas, energy weapons, Agni Astra, even artificial beings, all mentioned with startling detail. Skeptics call these pure symbolism, metaphors for meditation or spiritual power. But let us not forget, Leonardo da Vinci's notebooks once seemed like fantasy too. Sometimes imagination precedes invention or remembrance. What if these descriptions weren't inventions of poets, but dim recollections of technologies from a previous epoch? There are scattered records of ancient vitrified forts in Scotland, India, and the Middle East, stone walls fused by extreme heat, as though melted from within. No natural explanation fully accounts for this. Some geologists suggest lightning strikes or ancient warfare using substances now lost, but others see it as the scar of forgotten science, the kind of destructive force hinted at in the Mahabharata's description of a single weapon that could consume all of creation. That sounds uncomfortably like nuclear imagery, written thousands of years before modern physics. Coincidence again? Or did the ancients know more than we think? The gods within. But here is the deeper truth the Vedas teach, and it is perhaps more profound than any myth or artifact. They tell us that divinity isn't something out there, it is within. The word Deva doesn't just mean God, it means shining one, a force of light, consciousness, energy. So perhaps when they spoke of gods walking among men, they weren't talking about supernatural beings, but elevated humans, enlightened, powerful, wise giants, not in size, but in spirit. Maybe the age of gods wasn't about physical titans, but about a civilization that reached extraordinary spiritual and intellectual heights, one we've long since forgotten. And perhaps their downfall, their disappearance, wasn't caused by a meteor or flood, but by something closer to home: hubris, the great vanishing. How the giants and gods disappeared. The story of Earth is a story of disappearance. Species appear, flourish, and vanish, leaving only fossils, shadows, and unanswered questions. But what if the same is true not only for animals, but for entire civilizations? We've explored fossils of giants and the verses of gods. We've seen their footprints in stone and their memory in scripture. But now comes the hardest part of all: their end. What happened to the beings that once ruled this world? Did they die in fire, in flood, or did they simply fade from our perception? The silent cataclysm. Many ancient cultures record a moment of great destruction, a single turning point when the earth itself seemed to rebel. In India, it was the pralaya, the cosmic dissolution in Mesopotamia, the Great Flood in Egypt, the terrors of Ra, when the gods withdrew. In Greek myth, Zeus cast down the Titans, sealing them in the depths of the earth. Different names, same pattern, a world of power, light, and giants wiped away almost overnight. Modern geology tells us that around 1,200 years ago, Earth entered a sudden climatic shift. The Younger Dryas event, glaciers melted rapidly, ocean levels rose by hundreds of feet, and entire ecosystems collapsed. For any civilization living along coastlines, as most advanced ones likely did, it would have been apocalyptic. Could that have been the moment the gods and giants disappeared? The fall beneath the waves. Plato spoke of Atlantis, a shining island of knowledge that sank beneath the sea in a single day and night of misfortune. For centuries, scholars dismissed it as allegory, yet modern sonar mapping of the ocean floor has revealed vast, unnatural-looking structures beneath the Atlantic and Indian Oceans, perfect geometric patterns, too precise for chance. In India, just off the coast of Gujarat, divers found something extraordinary: the ruins of Dwarka, the legendary city of Lord Krishna, submerged beneath 8,000 feet of water. Radiocarbon dating suggests the site is over 9,000 years old, predating every known civilization. If the myth of Dwarka is true, that it was a city of shining towers and great beings who vanished into the sea, then perhaps we are looking at the real echo of the great vanishing. It wasn't the only gods that disappeared, it was entire worlds. The sky turns dark in the Appanayara. There's a haunting passage. The light left the heavens, and the air grew heavy. The sound of thunder rolled without rain, and the children of the great ones fled to the mountains, never to return. What could this describe? Volcanic eruption? An impact event? A collapse of the magnetic field? Modern science has found traces of microdiamonds, platinum dust, and burnt organic material in sediment layers from the same period, all consistent with a massive impact. Possibly from a fragmented comet. An event of that scale would have vaporized continents and triggered years of darkness. If such a disaster struck, it would explain everything: the flood myths, the vanishing of megalithic builders, the sudden restart of civilization around Yuan BC. And maybe the gods didn't die, they were the survivors, the few who remained to rebuild, teaching the scattered tribes how to farm, build, and remember.
The ones who stayed. Every ancient culture speaks of teachers who came from the stars or from the sea after the cataclysm. The Sumerians called them the Anunnaki, the Egyptians called them the Teru, the Mayans spoke of Kukulkan, the feathered serpent who rose from the waters to bring knowledge. But maybe from the stars didn't mean from another planet. Maybe it meant from the past. Survivors of the pre-cataclysmic civilization, the last of the gods and giants, traveling across the broken earth, bringing fragments of their lost world. If you look closely at ancient architecture, this idea becomes even more compelling. How did cultures separated by oceans all build with megalithic precision, enormous stones fitted so perfectly you can't slide a knife between them? Egypt, Peru, Turkey, Japan all share this impossible mastery. Coincidence, or the signature of one teacher, one tradition, the hand of a civilization that endured long before ours? The memory becomes myth as centuries passed, memory turned to legend. The survivors' descendants became our ancestors. Their knowledge faded, simplified, sanctified into story. Giants became gods. Science became ritual. Memory became myth. And perhaps that's why, across every culture, we find the same longing, the same sense that humanity has fallen from a greater past, that something once divine existed here, and we are only its shadow. The Vedas call this the Kali Yuga, the age of darkness, forgetfulness, materialism. But even within that darkness, the verses promise a return, because every cycle that ends begins again. Fossils, faith, and the future now, as we unearth fossils, decode genomes, and peer into ancient DNA. Science stands on the edge of rediscovering what myth once knew. Did a race of giants or divine beings truly exist? We still don't know. But fossils don't lie, and myths don't persist for nothing. Every bone, every stone tool, every line of scripture, they're all puzzle pieces. Pieces of a truth too vast for one lifetime to uncover. Maybe we're not meant to find all the answers. Maybe we're meant to remember the questions. The return of the light in the final hymn of the Rig Veda, the poet writes, "From the darkness we awaken, the light that was lost returns. And the sons of men shall once again become as the sons of the gods." Perhaps the lost age of giants and gods isn't just a story of the past. Perhaps it's a mirror showing us what humanity once was, and what it might become again. Because if the ancients were right, and time truly moves in endless cycles, then this age, our age, is only one turn of the wheel. When the darkness fades, the light returns. And maybe, just maybe, the gods will walk the earth again. Closing narration for YouTube Tone. If you've made it this far through the echoes of forgotten time, thank you for joining me on this journey. The world is filled with mysteries still waiting to be uncovered, and the past is far from dead. So if you believe that history still has secrets, that truth hides between the lines of myth and memory, make sure to like, subscribe, and share this story. Because the more we remember, the closer we come to rediscovering who we really are and who we used to be.